Welcome back to the Hologram News Network, your trusted source of Star Atlas news. Today, we have an important update regarding the Sage crew crafting mechanic. With resource extraction and crafting, or REC, releasing within the next 30 to 60 days, it's important for you to understand this information if you're a serious crafter or producer of goods in the next iteration module. Now, we've been following this story since last August, and it's changed a few times on how the mechanic works. So before we go any further, I'd like to preface that any of this information could change in the near future. However, we'll cover the entire history and where we are today. Looking back to last August, we wrote an article following the Star Atlas Town Hall number 32 regarding how crew members would be used in Sage. Now, based off the information released during that town hall, crew members that come with your ships docked in a space station would be utilized as a crew to then craft and produce materials. Now, each ship in Star Atlas is assigned a certain number of crews. Now, at this time, each ship in Star Atlas will come with a predetermined number of crews as listed in the Galactic Marketplace. So if you're watching this video later, ships may or may not come with crew members, depending on when you enter the game. Now, looking back at the article we wrote in August, looking at all the available ships and the crew members they came with, the capital-sized ships came with upwards of 50 to 60 crew members, while the smaller ships came with single-digit crew members, going all the way down to extra small ships like Thimble Airbike, a single crew to ship for a single pilot. Now, as we look through the list of available ships, prices range from fairly cheap to fairly expensive. Now, at the end of this article, we conclude that perhaps the best value at the time for crews would indeed be the Thimble Airbike, the Airbike being the cheapest ship with one crew available on the market. At a 1-to-1 ratio, crews are relatively cheap with this ship. Now, that wouldn't be confirmed until later that year in December when the Sage game manual was released. Let's take a look. In the article, we analyze every ship on the market for its available cost and its available crew members. Going through each ship, we look at their size and available crew members based off of one key important mechanic. The total crafting point capacity management, determined by the number of privilege points a player has invested in the skill, will determine the number of crafting slots the player can have. Now, at the time, the council rank points system was determined of 142 points, and so crew members could be allocated points in order to build up the number of slots you have. Now, going through the ship analysis here, the Thimble Airbike remained the cheapest way to acquire crews cheaply. Again, a Thimble Airbike having one crew and costing approximately $1 to $2, as opposed to, let's say, a C-11, a 67 crewed ship, however costing thousands of dollars. Breaking down the math, the crew to cost ratio is a lot cheaper for a Thimble Airbike. Now, since December, a lot of people have been collecting airbikes in preparation for Sage crafting. However, players were still limited by the number of points they could allocate to their crafting skill, namely 142 points being the complete maximum for a single player account. Now, the important news that we have for today is that in the near future, and most likely, there will no longer be a limit to the amount of continuous crafting crew members you can have at any one given time. Information in the Foundation Room today from Shuda revealed that the council rank point system is being reworked and that the most likely scenario for crafting is that restrictions no longer exist. Let's take a look. The conversation begins with CEO Michael Wagner answering some questions regarding the council rank structure and the restrictions that they will have in REC. The CR restriction is applied to fleet formation, so departing the CSS. When I last chatted with the team about this, granted it was some time ago, you could load unlimited number of ships into the CSS, the Central Space Station. The CR, or Council Rank restriction, is applied to fleet formation, so departing the CSS. Again, with geo-locked assets, you'll need to collect all the materials and transport them back to the CSS in order to leverage your crew for crafting. It can be time-consuming relative to crafting at a space station and systems you occupy. Now, I follow up with this question here. From what we understand, there's no restrictions on the amount of ships docked at a space station either, unless you're saying that anything undocked from the Central Space Station counts as a fleet. Theoretically, you would stash a limited number of crew at all your forward space stations, and you would only be limited by the number of active crafting slots you have invested in council points, which is a globally applied limit. Now here's the key where Shuda chimes in. Yeah, the CR restriction is going through a revision process. For the next Sage release, the most likely scenario is that there is not going to be any restriction at all, not in the number of fleets you can form or the amount of crew you can use to craft. The only restriction will be the size of the fleet. Later on, when there are more systems implemented, crafting at the CSS will have more advantages than crafting at a regular starbase, if not upgraded. Again, these changes could potentially be different when the actual game rolls out. However, this is a big change to what was previously discussed in the Sage game manual. Does this mean that more players buy Thimble air bikes? Theoretically, there is no limit to the amount of crafters one player can produce, reducing the need for alternate accounts. Again, this information is subject to change and is not indicative of the final game release. However, if you are a crafter and intend on being an industrial player in Star Atlas, it is something you should consider going forward into the game, especially with Rec coming out within the next 30 to 60 days. We hope you enjoyed this information. If you liked any of the information you heard today, or found it useful, please like and subscribe to the Hologram News Network on any of the social media that you may follow. Again, I'm Criggs, and you're watching the Hologram News Network.